The clock on the living room wall chimed 11 p.m., its steady ticking the only sound filling the vast mid-millionth penthouse. Vian signed, setting her book down on the coffee table. Kim Taeyang, the notorious sharp, unyielding CEO of Kim Enterprise and her husband of 1 year, was late again. Their marriage was a mutual family agreement built on quiet respect and a strict boundary of personal space. Taeyang was a man of few words, always immaculate, always composed, and perpetually cold or so, she thought. The heavy front door clicked open, breaking the silence. Ryan stood up as Taeyang walked in, but something was immediately off. His usual crisp, commanding stride was replaced by a slight stagger. His signature charcoal blazer was draped loosely over his arm, his tie undone, and his dark bangs clung damply to his forehead. Taeyang Ryan walked over, her brow furrowing with concern. Are you alright? He did not answer right away. He braced one hand against the marble entryway wall, his shoulder rising and falling with a heavy breaths. When he finally lifted his head, Ryan gasped softly. His sharp jawline was flushed a deep crimson, and his normally piercing dark eyes were glassy and unfocused. Ryan, he muttered, his voice a low, raspy gravel that vibrated in his chest. Before she could process the sheer vulnerability in his tone, Taeyang took a step forward and completely collapsed into her space. He buried his face straight into the crook of her neck, his broad shoulder slumping as he let his entire weight rest against her. Whoa, Taeyang! Ryan stumbled back a step, catching him by the waist. The heat radiating off his body was alarming. It felt like holding a furnace. She reached up, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead. He was burning up. Ryan, you have a massive fever. Come on, let's get you to the bedroom. Tay, don't want to, he mumbled against her skin, his lips brushing her collarbone in a way that sent a sudden spike of adrenaline through her veins. Ryan, you don't have a choice. Move your feet, Mr. Kim. With a lot of efforts and a few breathless complaints from him, she finally managed to get him down the hall and onto the plush king sized bed. Taeyang let out a pathetic, low groan as he sank into the mattress immediately, pulling a pillow to his chest and curling inward. Ryan stood by the bedside, hands on her hips, looking down at the formidable CEO who currently looked more like a stubborn, overgrown puppy. I am going to get the thermometer and some medicine, she said, turning on her heel. Grab. A large, burning hot hand clamped around her waist with surprising strength. Ryan blinked, looking back. Taeyang was staring up at her through his massive ring, his bottom lip pouted out in a way that defied every single headline written about his ruthless business tactics. Stay, he demanded, though it lacked any real authority. It sounded entirely like a plea. Ryan, I need to get the medicine to make the fever go down, Taeyang. I will be right back. Tay, no, cold, he complained, shivering slightly despite the warmth of his skin. Stay here, you are cool. Ryan could not help the small smile that tugged at her lips. So the cold CEO turns into a needy toddler when his immune system crashes. She thought, highly amused. I will come back in 2 minutes, Taeyang. He stubbornly tightened his grip for a second, but as Ryan gave him a firm maternal look, his fingers slowly loosened. 2 minutes, he grumbled, burying his face back into the pillow, or I am coming to find you. True to her word, Ryan returned a few minutes later with a bowl of cool water, a small towel, a thermometer, and a bottle of fever reducer. Taeyang hadn't moved an inch, but his eyes tracked her every movement as she sat on the edge of the mattress. Sit up a bit, she instructed softly. He reluctantly propped himself up against the headboard, watching her pop the digital thermometer into his mouth. While waiting for the beep, Ryan unbuttoned the top three buttons of his dress shirt to help him cool down, trying her best to ignore the lean, toned chest shifted beneath her fingers. Beep, beep, beep. She pulled it out. 39.2 degrees Celsius. Right, definitely a fever. Take this, she said, handing him two pills and a glass of water. Taeyang looked at the white pills in her palm, then looked at her, his eyes narrowing with a sudden playful glint that did not belong on a sick man's face. Feed them to me. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, you have working hands. I am weak. He lied smoothly, dropping his hands limply onto the covers to prove his point. A tragic victim of the seasonal flu. Have some pity on your husband, Ryan. You are unbelievable. Ryan laughed, but played along anyway. Ryan placed the pills on his tongue, her fingertips slightly brushing his warm lips. The young eyes darkened for a split second as he took a sip of the water she held up to his mouth, swallowing the medicine. As Ryan set the glass back on the nightstand, Taeyang suddenly lunged forward. With a swift tug of her waist, he pulled her flat onto the bed right beside him. Taeyang, the water. Shh! He hushed, throwing a heavy arm over Ryan's waist and pinning her down. He pulled the thick duet up over both of them, trapping her in his cone of warmth. He nuzzled his face into her shoulder, inhaling deeply. Much better. You are going to give me your jumps, she complained, though she didn't actually try to break free. The feeling of his strong arms around her, holding her as if she were his lifeline, made her heart to a dangerous flutter. I don't care, he murmured sleepily. You are my wife. Shared asset, shared jumps. This is not how corporate law works, Mr. Kim. Tay, it's tonight. For a while, the bedroom was entirely quiet. The medicine seemed to be doing its job, soothing the rough edge of Taeyang fever. Ryan stayed perfectly still, listening to the steady, rhythmic beat of his heart against her chest. She carefully reached out, dipping the small cloth into the cool water bowl she had placed near the bed, and gently began to dab his forehead and temples. Tang let out a soft, contented sigh at the cool sensation, his grip on her waist losing just a friction. Ryan, he whispered into the dark, his voice soundly incredibly small. Yeah, still feeling bad? No, just thinking. He paused, shifting slightly so he could look into her eyes. The moonlight filtered through the sheer curtains, illuminating the soft, vulnerable contour of his face. The cold, impeccable mask he wore to the office was completely gone. You usually look at me like you are waiting for me to snap at you. Ryan paused, the damp cloth hovering over his brow. Well, you are not exactly the same approachable man, Taeyang. You are kind of intimidating. A faint self deprecating smile touched his lips. I have to be out there. If I let my guard down, people take advantage. But he reached up, his hot finger gently brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his thumb lingering on her cheekbone. I don't want to be intimidating to you. I am sorry if I made you feel like you had to keep your distance. His sincerity in his gaze caught her off guard. The wall she had meticulously built up around her heart over the past year began to crumble under his warm touch. You don't have to apologize, Ryan said softly, placing her hand over his on her cheek. Just promise me you won't only act like human being when you have a 39-degree fever. Taeyang let out a low, breathless chuckle, the sound vibrating pleasantly against her. Deal. The next morning, the bright sunlight pierced through the windows, waking Vian up. She blinked, realizing she was still securely tangled in Taeyang's arms. She carefully pressed her hand to his forehead. Relief washed over her. His skin was cool, the fever broken. Moving slowly, she tried to slip out from under his arm to go make breakfast, but the moment she shifted, the grip around her waist tightened like a vice. Going somewhere, a deep moaning rough voice rumbled in her ears. Vian turned her head to find Taeyang looking down at her. His eyes were clear, sharp, and full of a very familiar, deliberate mischief. The vulnerable, helpless patient from last night was gone, replaced by the confident man she married. Only this time his warmth was directed entirely at her. Your fever is gone, Vaya noted, narrowing her eyes spaciously, which means you can let me go now. I don't think so. Taeyang hummed, a lazy, devastating smirk spreading across his handsome face. I am still recovering. Doctor's orders say I need maximum bed rest and extended emotional support. Vian, I am not a doctor, and I never ordered that. Tay, well, I am the CEO, so I am overriding your protocol. He teased, pulling her flush against his chest. He leaned down, his lips brushing against the shell of her ear. Thank you for taking care of me last night, sweetheart. The sudden use of the pet name made Vian's cheeks instantly match the color of his fever from the night before. You are welcome. Now let me go. I have to make breakfast. Breakfast can wait. Taeyang murmured, his voice softening as he tightened her chin up to look at him. The mischief in his eyes faded, replaced by a deep, burning affection that took her breath away. This is much more important. Before she could argue, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a low, lingering, and undeniably romantic kiss that sealed the definitive end of their cold, distant marriage. Please like, comment, and subscribe.